The alarm screamed through the small ship like an angry child. And Garrett Cole woke up with his face pressed against a cold metal floor. He had fallen asleep under the engine again. His wrench still in his hand, grease covering his fingers and half his face. The freighter shook hard. And Garrett knew that sound all too well. Something had gone wrong with the fuel line, and if he did not fix it soon, he would be floating dead in the void of space. He pulled himself up and ran to the control panel, his boots heavy on the metal grating. The screen showed him what he already feared, a leak in the external fuel coupling. The kind of problem that required him to go outside. Garrett hated spacewalks. He grabbed his suit from the locker. The old thing patched in 12 places and held together mostly by hope and stubborn. Repair work, the Rusty Miracle, was not a pretty ship. But she was his. Bought with 15 years of savings and endless nights of work, he had found her in a junkyard on Station Cree 7, half destroyed and marked for scrap. Everyone told him she was beyond saving. Garrett did not listen to everyone. He sealed his helmet, checked his oxygen twice, and stepped into the airlock. The void greeted him with its terrible silence. Stars scattered across the blackness like spilled salt on a dark table. He clipped his safety line and began pulling himself along the hull, his headlamp cutting a small circle of light in the endless dark. The fuel coupling was on the far side, near the cargo hold he never used because the door stuck and he had not gotten around to fixing it yet. He moved carefully, hand over hand, watching his breath fog the inside of his helmet. Then his light caught something that should not exist. At first, Garrett thought it was debris, some piece of space junk that had attached itself to his hull during his last jump through hyperspace. But debris did not have scales. Debris did not breathe. He stopped moving, his heart suddenly pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. The thing stretched across nearly the entire bottom of his ship, wrapped in chains that glowed with a sickly green light. The chains were buried deep in flesh that looked like the night sky itself, dark purple and black with tiny points of light scattered across it like stars lived inside the creature. Garrett had seen many strange things in his years flying the outer sectors. He had seen space whales singing to moons, crystal beings that ate radiation, and once a creature made entirely of living lightning, but he had never seen anything like this. He moved closer, against every instinct, screaming at him to go back inside and jump to the nearest station. The creature was at least 60 meters long, serpentine in shape with 4 massive wings folded tight against its body. Its head was larger than his entire cockpit, and as his light passed over it, 2 eyes opened. They were like looking into dying suns, orange and gold and filled with an ancient pain that made Garrett's chest hurt. The creature did not move, did not attack, did not even try to pull away. It simply looked at him with those impossible eyes. And Garrett understood with sudden clarity that it was waiting to die. He had seen that look before, in the eyes of a dog he had found as a child on Earth, left chained to a fence in the summer heat. He had unchained that dog too. Garrett examined the chains more closely, and his stomach turned cold. These were Voxian slave chains, outlawed in most of the galaxy, but still traded in the dark places between stars. They were designed to bind and to hurt, feeding on the pain of whatever they held. He had removed them from ships before, from cargo holds where terrible people kept terrible secrets. He knew how to break them. The rational part of his brain, the part that had kept him alive for 43 years, told him exactly what he should do. He should go back inside, send a message to the Dominion Collective, and claim whatever reward they would give for such a creature. The Dominion controlled most of the galaxy, their hyperspace beacons making travel between stars possible. They would pay well for something this rare. But Garrett was not a rational man. He was a mechanic. And mechanics looked at broken things differently than other people. Where others saw garbage, he saw potential. Where others saw hopeless cases, he saw something worth saving. He looked at this creature. This impossible dragon made of void and starlight. And he did not see a monster or a payday. He saw something that someone had tried to throw away. Garrett pulled himself closer until he could touch the chains. The creature flinched, and he felt its fear like a physical wave. "Easy," he said. Knowing sound did not travel in space. Knowing the creature probably could not understand him anyway. "I am going to help you." He activated his cunning torch. The small blue flame bright against the darkness. The first chain took 10 minutes to cut through, the Voxian metal fighting him every step when it finally broke. The creature made a sound, he felt, in his bones rather than heard a low vibration of surprise and something that might have been hope. The second chain was harder because his torch was running low. The third nearly killed him when the creature shifted and almost knocked him off the hull. But Garrett kept working, kept cutting, kept talking in a steady stream of nonsense about his ship and his life, and the time he fixed a quantum drive with nothing but tape and determination. When the last chain fell away, the creature slowly unfolded its wings. They spread across the void like curtains made of night, and Garrett saw that they were torn in places, damaged by the chains and by whatever had happened before. The creature looked at him again, and this time there was something different in those ancient eyes. Not gratitude exactly, but something close to recognition. Then it spoke directly into his mind, and Garrett nearly had a heart attack. "Why?" the voice asked, old and tired and cracked with centuries of pain. "Why did you free me, human?" Garrett floated there in the void, staring at an impossible creature from an age the galaxy had forgotten. And he gave the only answer that made sense to him. "Because you were broken," he said. "And I fix broken things." The creature was silent for a long moment. "I am called Serathale," she finally said. "And you are the first being in 4,000 years to show me kindness." Garrett nodded as if this was perfectly normal. "Well, Serathale," he said, "my name is Garrett Cole, and we need to get you inside before someone notices you are here." He did not know then that his life had just changed forever. He did not know that the galaxy itself would soon shake because of what he had done tonight. All he knew was that his fuel line still needed fixing. And now he apparently had a dragon to take care of too. Some days were just like that. 3 weeks passed in the asteroid field, and Garrett learned what it meant to care for a dragon. Serathale could not fit inside the rusty miracle, so she wrapped herself around the ship like a protective shell. Her massive body curling through the gaps between floating rocks. Garrett spent his days outside with her, treating her wounds with medical supplies meant for humans and hoping they would work. They did, slowly. Though he suspected her healing had more to do with her ancient biology than his clumsy doctoring. She was weak in ways that went beyond the physical. The chains had done something to her spirit, and there were long hours when she would not speak, would not move, would simply stare into the void as if searching for something lost forever. Garrett talked during those silences. He told her about Earth, about the small town in what used to be called Montana, where he grew up. He told her about his mother, who fixed old cars and taught him that everything had value if you looked at it the right way. He told her about his father who left when Garrett was 7 and never came back. He told her about the day he first saw the stars from orbit and knew he could never live on a planet again. Serathale listened, and slowly she began to share her own story. Her people were called void worms, and they had existed before most of the current species of the galaxy had learned to walk upright. They were born in the spaces between stars. In the dark places where reality grew thin, they could travel through hyperspace without ships, without technology, using nothing but their own minds to find paths through the folded fabric of space. This gift had been their destruction when the Dominion Collective rose to power 8,000 years ago. They discovered that void worm minds could be used to power hyperspace beacons. These beacons allowed other ships to travel safely between stars. But the cost was terrible. The worms were captured, chained, and slowly consumed by the machines built around them. Their consciousness was stretched across light years, their pain becoming the foundation of galactic civilization. "My daughter," Surathale said one night, her voice echoing in Garrett's mind like distant thunder. "She was taken from me 4,000 years ago." Garrett sat on the hull of his ship, wrapped in his suit, watching starlight play across the dragon's scales. "What was her name?" he asked. "Vithara," Surathale said. And the word carried so much grief that Garrett felt tears forming in his eyes. "She was barely 1,000 years old, still a child by our accounting." "Is she still alive?" Garrett asked. Though he was not sure, he wanted to know the answer. "The beacons keep us alive," Surathale said. "They have to, or we cannot power them anymore. But what remains inside those machines is not truly life." Garrett thought about this for a long time. He thought about the hyperspace beacons he had passed through hundreds of times. Never questioning what made them work, he thought about the comfortable lie that allowed the entire galaxy to travel freely while creatures like Surathale screamed inside the machinery. "That is wrong," he finally said. "That is just wrong." Surathale turned one massive eye toward him, and he saw something flicker there, something that might have been surprise. "Every species in the galaxy uses the beacons," she said. "They have for thousands of years. They do not care what powers them. I care," Garrett said. He did not know why those two words hit the ancient dragon so hard. But she went very still, and when she spoke again, her voice was different. "You are strange," she said. "When I was captured by the traffickers, I expected to die. When you found me, I expected you to sell me or use me or simply leave me to float until death came. I did not expect you to cut my chains." "Yeah, well," Garrett said, uncomfortable with the weight of her attention. "I do not like seeing things in chains." "It is more than that," Surathale said. "You see me as a person, not as a resource or a monster or a myth. You see me as something worth helping." "You are worth helping," Garrett said. "Everyone is worth helping until they prove otherwise. And even then, maybe they just need more help." Surathale made a sound that might have been laughter. "Humans are very young," she said. "Your species has only been in space for 300 years. Most of the galaxy dismisses you as children playing in the dark." "I know," Garrett said. "I have heard all the jokes, but perhaps," Surathale continued, "perhaps that youth is a gift. Perhaps you have not yet learned to accept the cruelties that older species call necessary." She was quiet for a moment, and then she said something that changed everything. "There is an ancient bond my people could form with other beings," she said. "It was how we once worked together with younger species, sharing our sight with those who could not see the paths between stars." Garrett felt something shift in the void around them, a tension building like the moment before lightning. "I have not offered this bond to anyone in 6,000 years, Surathale said. "I swore I never would again, not after what the Dominion did to us. Not after they used our bonds to find and capture more of my people." "Then do not offer it," Garrett said. "You do not owe me anything." "I know," Surathale said. "That is why I want to offer it." Before Garrett could respond, alarms began screaming inside his ship. He scrambled back through the airlock and checked his sensors. And his blood ran cold. 6 ships had just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the asteroid field. They were Dominion hunters, elite trackers who specialized in finding things that did not want to be found. Somehow, they had followed him here. "Garrett," Surathale's voice echoed in his mind with sudden urgency. "We cannot outrun them. My wings are still too damaged to carry us through hyperspace." He stared at the approaching ships, his mind racing through options and finding none. Then Surathale spoke again. "Will you accept my bond?" she asked. "Will you trust me with your mind as you trusted me with your kindness?" Garrett thought about his mother, about the old cars she fixed, about her voice telling him that sometimes you had to take a chance on something broken. Yes, he said. The universe cracked open inside his skull. He screamed as knowledge poured into him. As paths he had never known existed lit up across his consciousness like roads made of fire. He could see the asteroid field in a way he had never seen anything before. Could see the spaces between atoms. Could see the folds in reality where hyperspace waited to be entered. He could see the Dominion ships. Could see their weapons charging. Could see the hatred in the minds of their crews, and he could see a path, a tiny, impossible path through the asteroids and into a hyperspace lane that his sensors had never detected. Garrett moved before he could think, his hands dancing across controls, the rusty miracle responding like she had never responded before. Sarathil wrapped tighter around the hull, her wounded wings spreading just enough to stabilize their flight. Together, they dove through the asteroid field at speeds that should have killed them. Together, they found the hidden path and fell into hyperspace. Together, they vanished, leaving the Dominion hunters screaming in frustration behind them when they emerged 3 days later in a sector of space that had no name on any map. Garrett sat in his pilot's chair and tried to remember how to breathe. What was that? He whispered. That was our bond, Sarathil said, her voice tired but warm. That was what my people used to give to those we trusted. Garrett looked at his hands, still shaking, still feeling the echo of that incredible awareness. We are going to free them, he said. And he was not asking permission. Your daughter, your people. Everyone. The Dominion is trapped inside those beacons. Sarathil was silent for a long time. That would require fighting the entire Dominion collective. She finally said, Then I guess we better get started. Garrett said, I know a few people who might want to help. For the first time in 4,000 years. Sarathil felt something she had forgotten existed: hope. The bounty on Garrett Cole's head reached 50 million credits within a week. Every mercenary, every bounty hunter, every desperate smuggler in 12 sectors suddenly had his face burned into their memory. The Dominion did not issue bounties lightly. And this one was larger than anything posted in the last 100 years. But Garrett was not hiding anymore. The first beacon he hit was a small one, out on the edge of settled space where traffic was light and security was lazy. He dropped out of hyperspace with Sarathil wrapped around his ship, her scales shimmering with new strength after weeks of healing. The beacon station was massive, a floating city of metal and light that pulsed with the eerie glow of hyperspace energy. Most people who passed through never thought about what powered it. Garrett could not stop thinking about it now. There are guards, Sarathil warned him. Automated defenses and a crew of 30. Can you feel them? Garrett asked. Your people inside. There was a long pause. Yes, Sarathil said, and her voice cracked with old grief. There are 3 fragments of void worm consciousness powering this beacon. They are in such pain, Garrett. They have been screaming for centuries. Garrett set his jaw and pushed his ship forward. Then let us give them some quiet. What followed was not a battle in any traditional sense. Garrett did not have weapons worth mentioning. Just a few old cannons he used to break up asteroids for salvage. But he had something better than weapons. He had knowledge. Sarathil had spent 4,000 years studying the Dominion's technology, waiting for a chance that never came. She knew how the beacons worked, knew their weaknesses, knew exactly where to cut to free what was trapped inside without destroying the station. Garrett was a mechanic, and mechanics knew how to take things apart. He landed on the beacon's maintenance port, the one spot the automated defenses could not cover because workers needed access. He walked through the station with a toolkit on his back and Sarathil's voice guiding him through the corridors. The guards who found him were confused. He did not look like a threat, just a tired human in a dirty jumpsuit carrying a wrench by the time they realized what he was doing. It was too late. Garrett reached the core of the beacon and found the housing that contained the void. Worm fragments. It was a horrible thing. A machine that looked like it had been designed by someone who enjoyed causing pain. He could hear the screaming now. Not with his ears, but with the new awareness Sirathale had given him. 3 ancient beings. Their minds stretched thin and twisted by centuries of agony. Their sense of self almost completely gone. He got to work. It took 4 hours to disconnect the fragments safely. 4 hours of delicate work while Sirathale held off the guards with waves of psychic energy that left him confused and wandering in circles when the last connection was cut. The screaming stopped. 3 presences drifted free from the machine. So damaged they could barely form thoughts anymore, Sirathale gathered them to herself, wrapping them in her own consciousness like a mother holding wounded children. They cannot be healed, she told Garrett, her voice heavy with sorrow. They have been broken too long, but they can rest now. They can finally rest. Garrett watched as the fragments faded, their tortured existence finally ending in something like peace. He did not cry. But it was a near thing. How many more? He asked. Thousands, Sirathale said. There are thousands of beacons across the galaxy, and each one holds fragments of my people. Garrett nodded and started walking back to his ship. Then we have a lot of work to do. Word spread faster than he expected. The Dominion tried to suppress the story, but too many people had seen what happened, had seen the footage from the station's cameras that somehow found its way onto the Galactic network. A human mechanic had walked into a hyperspace beacon and freed what was trapped inside. He had not killed anyone, had not destroyed the station, had simply undone something terrible and walked away. The galaxy did not know how to process this. Mercenaries started having second thoughts about that bounty. It was one thing to hunt a criminal, another thing to hunt someone who freed slaves from machines that powered your own ships. 3 weeks after the first beacon, a ship appeared at Garrett's coordinates, a battered cargo hauler almost as old as the Rusty Miracle. I saw what you did, the pilot said over the communication channel. I want to help. Her name was Zix, and she was a Kreth, one of the insectoid species that the Dominion had conquered 500 years ago. She had been a mechanic on a Dominion station until she saw the footage and walked off her job. I fix things, she said when she came aboard Garrett's ship, her compound eyes studying him with fierce intensity. And I think the whole galaxy might be broken. A week later, 2 more ships arrived, then 5 more, then 20. They called themselves the Garage, a name that started as a joke and became something more. They were mechanics and engineers, fixers and builders, people who had spent their lives making things work and were sick of making things work for a government that ran on suffering. Garrett did not ask to lead them. He was not a leader, not a general, not a politician. He was just a mechanic who had found a dragon chained to his hull. But somehow everyone kept looking at him for direction, and he kept giving it because someone had to. They hit a second beacon, then a third. Each time they freed more fragments of void worms. Each time more of them faded into peaceful oblivion. Each time Sirethal's grief grew deeper, but her determination grew stronger. The Dominion responded with fury. They sent battle fleets to guard the beacons, put kill orders on every member of the Garage, threatened entire planets with sanctions if they gave the rebels shelter. But the Garage did not need shelter. They were mechanics. They made their own shelter out of abandoned stations and broken ships and the junk that nobody else wanted. They fixed what was broken and kept moving. Garrett stood on the hull of his ship one night, watching Sirathale drift among the stars, her wings finally fully healed. Are you afraid? She asked him. Every day, he admitted. I keep thinking about how small I am, how this whole thing is probably impossible, how we are going to fail and die and nothing will change. But you keep going, she said. Yeah, Garrett said. I keep going because stopping would mean accepting that some things cannot be fixed. And I do not believe that. Sirathale moved closer, her massive head coming to rest near where he stood. Your species is very strange, she said. You are small and fragile, and your lives are so terribly short. But you fight like you have forever. Maybe that is why, Garrett said. We do not have forever, so we cannot afford to wait for the right moment. If we see something wrong, we have to fix it now, because we might not get another chance. Sirathale considered this. I think, she said slowly, I think I'm glad you found me. Garrett Cole. Me too, he said. Now come on. We have another beacon to hit tomorrow, and I need to recalibrate the hyperdrive before we go. He went back inside his ship. And Sirathale followed, wrapping around the hull like she had done every night since he freed her in the distance. A Dominion fleet gathered the hunt was growing. But so was the hunted, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, the fragments of ancient dragons began to whisper to each other. For the first time in millennia, something was changing. In the galaxy, something that started with one human mechanic and a cutting torch, something that could not be stopped. The Dominion Collective assembled the largest war fleet in 3,000 years. 400 capital ships gathered at the edge of the Vareth Nebula, their weapons charged and their crews eager. The High Council had declared the Garage a threat to galactic stability, and they meant to end that threat with overwhelming force. Chancellor Vrex addressed the fleet from his flagship, his gray face twisted with righteous anger. These terrorists seek to destroy our way of life, he said. His voice broadcast to every ship. They would tear down the hyperspace network that connects us all, plunging the galaxy into darkness and chaos. The soldiers cheered, because that was what soldiers did when their leaders told them who to hate. But not all of them cheered with conviction. Some of them had seen the footage, the real footage, not the edited version the Dominion released. They had seen what was inside the beacons, had seen the creatures screaming in their metal prisons, had seen a human mechanic gently disconnect them and set them free. Those soldiers were quiet during the Chancellor's speech. They were wondering if they were on the right side on Earth, a planet most of the galaxy considered irrelevant. The United Nations held an emergency session. The Dominion had demanded that humanity condemn Garrett Cole, turn over any information about his location, and formally apologize for the actions of their citizen. The debates went on for days. Some argued that Earth could not afford to anger the Dominion. Humanity was too young, too weak, too dependent on the hyperspace network that the Dominion controlled. Others pointed out that the network was built on slavery, on the torture of sentient beings, on a crime so vast it made every other atrocity in history look small in the end. The vote was not even close. Earth refused to condemn Garrett Cole more than that. They began broadcasting the unedited footage to every corner of the galaxy, using every communication channel they could access. The truth spread like fire in dry grass. Other species watched and remembered their own histories. The Kreth remembered how the Dominion had conquered their homeworld, had taken their queen and turned her into a symbol of submission. The Minari remembered the genetic programs that had stolen their children for experiments that lasted generations. The Vosk remembered the trade agreements that were really economic slavery, the treaties that gave them nothing while taking everything. And the humans, the young, foolish, insignificant humans, they remembered something too. They remembered that their ancestors had fought against slavery on their own world, had died in wars to end it, had declared that no being should be property. That fight had never really ended. It had just gotten bigger. Ships began appearing at the coordinates. The Garage used not dozens now, but hundreds. They came from every species, every world, every corner of a galaxy that had been silent for too long. A Kreth battle cruiser arrived with 200 warriors who had deserted their posts. A based Minari science vessel came carrying doctors who wanted to help heal the freed. Voidworm fragments, a fleet of Vosk trading ships, brought supplies and credits and the blessing of their merchant guilds, and human ships came old freighters and new cruisers, military vessels whose crews had mutinied, and civilian boats whose owners had simply decided they would rather die free than live. Complicit Garrett stood on the bridge of the Rusty Miracle and watched them arrive, his mind struggling to process what was happening. "I'm a mechanic," he said to Sirathale. "I fix engines and patch hulls and sometimes rewire navigational systems when they catch fire." "You are more than that now," she said. "I did not ask to be more than that." "No," she agreed. "But that is precisely why you had to be. Leaders who seek power cannot be trusted with it. Only those who take it up reluctantly can be trusted to put it down when the work is done." Garrett thought about this and decided it was too philosophical for him. He went back to work on his ship, because there was always something that needed fixing. The Dominion fleet moved toward the Varith Nebula, expecting to find a ragged band of rebels waiting to be crushed. Instead, they found a gathering unlike anything the galaxy had seen in living memory. 1,200 ships from 30 species, arranged in formations that made no military sense because they were not soldiers. They were workers, fixers, ordinary people who had decided that enough was enough. Garrett broadcast on all frequencies, his voice reaching every ship in both fleets. "This is Garrett Cole," he said. "Mechanic, salvage operator, and apparently rebel leader, although I am still not clear on how that happened." He paused, looking at Sirathale's image reflected in his cockpit glass. "I know what you have been told about us," he continued. "They say we want to destroy the hyperspace network, plunge the galaxy into chaos, tear down civilization itself." The Dominion fleet waited, weapons locked and ready. "That is not what we want," Garrett said. "We are mechanics. We do not destroy things. We fix them." He took a breath. "The hyperspace network is broken. It was built on torture and slavery and the screaming of beings who have been suffering for thousands of years. That is not civilization. That is a horror we have all been pretending not to see. We are not here to fight you," he said. "We are here to ask you to help us fix something broken. We are asking you to remember that you were told the beacons were just machines, and to admit that you knew that was a lie." There was silence across the void then. Something unexpected happened. A Dominion cruiser broke formation, its engines powering down, its weapons going cold. "This is Captain Vera of the Righteous Fury," a voice said over the communication channel. "I have a daughter on the Minari homeworld. I cannot look her in the eyes if I fight to protect this." Another ship broke formation, then another. Then a dozen more. Chancellor Vrex screamed orders, threatened executions, demanded loyalty. But loyalty could not be demanded. It could only be earned. And the Dominion had spent too long earning fear instead. The battle that everyone expected never happened. Instead, there was a conversation, messy, chaotic, angry, painful, but a conversation nonetheless. Some Dominion ships stayed loyal and retreated to guard the core systems. Others joined the garage, most simply powered down and waited, their crews unwilling to fight but unsure what else to do. Garrett watched it happen from his cockpit, still not quite believing any of it was real. "They are choosing," Sirathale said, wonder in her ancient voice. "They are actually choosing. Everyone can choose," Garrett said. "Sometimes they just need to be reminded that the choice exists." A human diplomat named Sarah Chun came aboard the Rusty Miracle that night, sent by Earth's government to offer official support. She was small and fierce and looked at Garrett like she was trying to figure out how a man in a greasy jumpsuit had changed the course of history. "The Dominion still controls most of the beacons," she said. "They still have fleets loyal to them, resources beyond counting, and 8,000 years of infrastructure." "I know," Garrett said. "You cannot actually think you can win this," Garrett smiled. The tired smile of a man who had not slept properly in months. "I do not think about winning," he said. "I think about fixing. I think about the next beacon and the next fragment to free and the next person who decides they do not want to be part of something terrible anymore. That is not a strategy." Sarah said. "No," Garrett agreed. "But it is how you build a ship, one piece at a time, until suddenly you have something that can fly." Sarah stared at him for a long moment. Then she laughed. A sharp sound that held both frustration and admiration. "Earth will support you," she said. "For whatever that is worth, we will support you." "It is worth a lot," Garrett said. "It means humans are not alone in deciding that some things matter more than convenience." He went back to his engine, which was making a strange noise that he did not like. Sarah watched him work. This impossible man who had started a revolution without ever meaning to Garrett. She said, "Yeah, history is going to remember you." Garrett sighed, tightening a bolt that had come loose. "History can do what it wants," he said. "I have a fuel injector to replace before tomorrow," and somehow, that was the most human thing he could have said. It floated at the center of the galaxy, a station larger than moons, powered by the largest concentration of void worm consciousness ever captured from here. The Dominion controlled every hyperspace lane in civilized space from here. Chancellor Vrex commanded what remained of his loyal forces, and from here, for 4,000 years. Sirithael's daughter Vathara had screamed without stopping. Garrett looked at the station through his cockpit window, and for the first time since this all began, he felt truly afraid. There are 200 warships defending it. Zix reported from her station behind him, plus the station's own defenses, which are designed to destroy entire fleets. "I know," Garrett said. "Our forces are still 2 days away," she continued. "We cannot assault this alone. I know that too." Sirithael's presence filled his mind, warm and familiar after all these months together. "I have to go in," she said. "My daughter is in there, Garrett. I can feel her. She has been calling for me across 4,000 years. Then we go in together." Garrett said, "The odds of survival are very low." Garrett laughed, though there was no humor in it. "The odds have been low since the day I found you chained to my hull. That has not stopped us yet." He activated the communication system and broadcast to the small fleet that had followed them here. 50 ships crewed by mechanics and engineers. The core of the garage that had refused to wait for reinforcements. "This is Garrett," he said. "You all know what we are about to do. You all know we probably will not make it. If anyone wants to leave, I understand. No shame in wanting to live. Not a single ship moved. All right then," Garrett said. "Let us go fix something." The assault on the beacon throne was the most insane military operation in galactic history, at least according to the historians who would study it later. 50 ships against 200. Plus a station with enough firepower to crack planets. It should have been a massacre. But the garage did not fight like a military force. They fought like mechanics, unpredictable, creative, and absolutely willing to do things that made no logical sense. Zix flew her cargo hauler directly into a Dominion battleship's engine bay and detonated her reactor, crippling the massive vessel. A Minari engineer named Koss hacked into the station's power grid and caused a cascade failure that shut down half its weapons. A human pilot named Jackson flew his fighter into the gaps between the station's armor plating and just kept going, causing damage from the inside that no external weapon could have achieved. And Garrett flew the Rusty Miracle straight toward the station's central core, with Sirithael wrapped around his hull like she had been since the very first night Dominion ships tried to stop them. They failed. Sirithael was fully healed now, and a fully healed void worm was something the galaxy had not seen in millennia. She tore through enemy vessels with claws that could rend metal like paper. She shielded The rusty miracle, with wings that could absorb energy weapons and scatter them into harmless light. She burned with the fire of ancient stars. And she was beautiful and terrible and unstoppable. They breached the station's hull in the maintenance section, because there was always a maintenance section. And it was always the weakest point. Garrett ran through corridors filled with smoke and alarms, his toolkit bouncing on his back. His mind connected to Sirithales as she guided him toward the core. Found the central chamber where Vathor was kept. It was worse than anything he had imagined. The young worm, though she was not young anymore, not after 4,000 years, was spread across the entire station. Her consciousness had been pulled apart and distributed through thousands of machines, each one using a fragment of her mind to power different systems. She was the station, and the station was her, and she had not been whole since the day they took her from her mother. Garrett stood in at the center of that horror and wanted to weep. "Can we save her?" he asked. Sirithale was silent for a long moment. "I do not know," she finally said. "She has been broken for so long." "Then we try," Garrett said. "That is all we ever do anyway." He got to work. The battle outside raged on. But inside the core chamber, there was only Garrett and his tools and the delicate work of disconnecting ancient technology without killing what was trapped inside. Sirithale joined him, her consciousness reaching out to touch her daughters. For the first time in 4 millennia, Vathor recognized her mother. And the sound she made was not a scream anymore. It was a sob. "Mother," she said, her voice fragmented across 1,000 machines. "You came. I am here," Sirithale said. "I am sorry it took so long. I am so sorry." Garrett worked faster, his hands steady despite the tears running down his face. One by one, he disconnected the machines that held Vathor. One by one, the fragments of her consciousness began to drift back together, and somewhere in the chaos, the other void worm fragments, the ones they had freed from beacons across the galaxy, the ones who had not faded but had been too damaged to form coherent thoughts. They felt what was happening. They added their voices to Sirithale's call. They reached out across light years, across the hyperspace network that had been their prison. And they began to sing. The song was older than the Dominion. It was older than most of the stars. It was the song that void worms had sung when the universe was young, when they swam through the spaces between galaxies and shaped the paths that matter would eventually follow. The song did not destroy the Dominion fleet. It did something stranger. It healed the hyperspace lanes themselves. New paths opened where none had existed before. Natural paths that needed no beacons, no tortured minds, no screaming dragons to power them. The Dominion's monopoly on space travel ended in an instant. Every ship in the galaxy suddenly had access to hyperspace, not through controlled beacons, but through the natural fabric of reality itself. Chancellor Vrex watched his empire crumble in the space of a single hour. He tried to flee, but there was nowhere to go. His own crew turned on him, unwilling to die for a cause that had just become meaningless. Garrett finished disconnecting the last machine, and Vathara drifted free. She was damaged, perhaps beyond full recovery, but she was alive, and she was whole, and she was with her mother again. Sirithal wrapped around her daughter, and for a long moment the two dragons simply held each other in the void. "Thank you," Vathara said to Garrett, her voice still weak but growing stronger. "Thank you for bringing her back to me." Garrett sat on the floor of the chamber, exhausted beyond words. "Thank you for holding on," he said. 4,000 years is a long time to wait. "You are strange," Vathara said. "Mother told me about humans. She said you were stubborn and foolish and refused to accept when things were impossible." "Yeah," Garrett said. "That sounds about right." The days that followed were chaotic. The Dominion Collective did not fall immediately. Governments rarely do, but its power was broken. Without control of the hyperspace network, They had nothing to offer and nothing to threaten species that had been subjugated for millennia declared independence. Trade routes that had been restricted for generations opened to everyone, and the void worms. The few who remained were no longer hunted. They were celebrated. Siratho became something like an ambassador, helping negotiate the new order that was emerging from the ruins of the old Vathara. Began the slow process of recovery. Surrounded by those who wanted to help her heal, the other fragments, too damaged to survive on their own, were gently released into the void between stars. Where they could finally rest, Garrett went back to his ship. The Rusty Miracle needed repairs. She always needed repairs, and he found comfort in the familiar work. A delegation came to him 6 months later. Representatives from a dozen species, offering him positions of power, titles, wealth, anything he wanted. He turned them all down. "I am a mechanic," he said. "I fix things. That is what I do. That is what I want to keep doing." They did not understand. Sirathale did. "You are the same person you were when you found me," she said, watching him work on his engine for the 1,000th time. "The galaxy has changed around you, but you have not changed at all." "Should I have?" he asked. "No," she said. "That is precisely the point. You did all of this not because you wanted power or glory, but because you saw something broken and could not walk away." Garrett tightened a bolt, wiped his hands on his jumpsuit, and looked out at the stars. "There is always something broken," he said. "Always something that needs fixing." "Yes," Sirathale agreed. "And that is why you will never stop." She curled around his ship like she had done every night since the beginning, her scales warm against the metal hull. "Will you stay?" Garrett asked. "For as long as you will have me," she said. "You are my partner now, the human who freed me when he had no reason to. The mechanic who fixed what the entire galaxy thought was beyond repair." Garrett smiled, the honest smile of a man who had found his place in the universe. "Then let us see what else needs fixing." The Rusty Miracle lifted off from the station, heading toward the void between stars. Somewhere out there, something was broken, and Garrett Cole would find it, and he would fix it, because that was what mechanics did. And that was why the galaxy would never be the same again.